Okay, today is August 23rd, Monday, class 3 of CAD 212. Today in class, we're going to do an introduction to Revit. We're going to talk about BIM. You'll hear BIM a lot, and what it stands for is Building Information Modeling. And that's what we're actually creating when we're doing a Revit drawing. There's other three-dimensional programs out there, but basically when people refer to BIM, they're talking about Revit and any other three-dimensional drawing. And what it means is it's an intelligent 3D model based process that gives architecture, engineering, and construction professionals the insight and tools to be more efficiently plan, design, and construct and manage building infrastructure. So what does that mean? That means as we're building it, as we're drawing one line, we're not just drawing a one line, much like in CAD, we're actually putting more information in there as far as how to create this wall, the thickness of the wall, what the wall is going to be made out of. And that translates to all sorts of different information that we can extract from Revit as we go through the process. It'll give us, what type of tiles that we can use, and you can extract that information from there, what kind of windows that you can use, which we make the schedule out of. So it's lots of information. It's not just a two-dimensional drawing, much like it is in CAD. So it's just a different way that we can look at, that we can build a three-dimensional model very quickly and also use that information from it to make our building process a lot better. So when you hear BIM, it's not just Revit, but there's other programs, but it's just a lot of the information that's going in there as well. So you'll hear that from time to time. Most people just refer to this as Revit, even in business. So the next thing I want to do is I'm going to go through the graphic user interface. Let's see. And then we're going to jump into creating walls and do like a little crash course in Revit. So close that. So the graphic user interface is located in your files. And this should be active for everybody. And we're just going to run through this. In fact, if you have Revit on your computer, you can go ahead and open it, get it started. And you'll see that I refer to these parts of the Revit screen a lot. We'll be going back and forth to these, and also it's good to know. So we'll just use this as a general outline. Obviously, the first thing that we're going to take a look at, this one is a little dated, so it's not necessarily up to date, and we do need to update that, but you'll have section Revit. It used to be you could click the R over here, but now everything's located in File. So when it says Application menu in purple R, that means that we're just referring to this File menu. Come on, man. And there's a lot of other stuff that's involved in here. We'll kind of touch on some topics about that later on, but that's basically the gist of that. Next is a quick access toolbar. We're going to use that a lot. You'll hear me use that a lot, and it is used a lot. It's very user friendly, just like it says quick access toolbar. I'm trying to open up two things at one time. It's just making me crazy. All right, Revit, come on. A little better. All right. Okay, so quick access toolbar is located here in your Revit. You notice it's located up here sometimes too. You can change the location of this. So if it's located in this different area of yours, you can just go ahead and click on this drop down caret, and then you can move to show above ribbon. So you'll see it located here sometimes. And then you can also move back down to below the ribbon. This is very customizable, and since you're using your own Revit at home, you can customize it any which way you want to. You can change that up, and we can't add different ones. But the ones that we are going to be using frequently are this. I don't really necessarily show you how to customize it, because when we get to classroom, it gets very frustrating for some people when they have different settings on here. But in your home Revit version, go ahead and feel free to use that as much as you want, but we will use this a lot when we're going through the process. Okay, quick access toolbar, and the ribbon, the entire ribbon is located here, this section. So it's made up of a couple of different points. So the ribbon is made out of these different tabs at the top, which tell you if you're working in architecture, or structure, or systems, or all sorts of different things like that. And then that's also made out of the contextual tabs. So a lot of times when I'm kind of cycling you through something, I'll say, let's go to the architecture tab, the build panel, and then the wall tool. And that's how I'll refer to things, or go to the massing and site tab, and then the topo surface, then the model site panel, and the topo surface tool. So that's how I try to walk through it to start with, and then I'll start going a little bit faster so you kind of catch on to where these things are located. Contextual tab, you'll notice that sometimes it shows up in green. This means that if there is something active, it's going to give you some other options in this green section. Like if we do pick walls, notice how this popped up in, where's that green tab up here? Oh, so frustrating. So it depends on what you're drawing that's going to show up in a different type of tab, with this conceptual tab. So we got something else. Well, we'll get to that later when it kind of pointed out a little bit clearer. So there's that conceptual tab right here. There's the information center where you can look up some more stuff. We don't really use that a lot. Ribbon panel and tool, which we were talking about. So the entire ribbon is broken up into tabs, panels, and different tools. So when we're talking about your window tool or door tool or things like that, you refer to those over here. Then the options bar. The options bar is here, this green bar that pops up when we have something active. And there's other stuff that's going to give us options to like place things, or draw things, or kind of change things. But we can find that in the options bar. Another big one that you're going to hear used a lot is type selector. Type selector is located here. And if you click on that and just do a drop down, you'll notice there's a bunch of preloaded walls in here, different types of walls that have all sorts of different parameters assigned to them. So you can, when you're creating a wall, we'll learn how to create our own walls, but you can also select different types of walls. So that's why it's a type selector, and they have different parameters in here. Once you select your wall type, when you have that selected, you'll notice there's a whole bunch of different information down here. This is your properties panel. It's equivalent to properties in Cadd. We'll start manipulating things like here, and this is a good way that you can learn how to play with the different options to create different walls, different windows, different things, how to manipulate the specifics of each individual piece of the building. So that is the properties palette. Obviously the drawing windows here. Project browser. So these two things, the properties and your project browser, you should always have these open. A lot of times they'll disappear. I'll show you how to bring those back, but these should always be open because this is really pretty much how we navigate through Revit. For floor plans, you can go to level 1, level 2, ceiling plan, different elevations. We'll click on those as a quick example today. And then also there's this view control bar we use a lot on the bottom part right here. And we'll go through those individual tools as we get through everything. There is a navigation bar and cube. We'll learn how to use that. I don't use the bar too much, but we use the cube in 3D. And then just contextual tab if we right click on something, how we can use that as navigation. So that's basically a really high level view of the Revit user interface. I just go over this if you have a chance. Come on. Oh, so frustrating. There we go. Okay, so what I would suggest now for you to do is go ahead and open Revit, and then we can kind of play with it. Move this stupid thing. Much better. Okay. And kind of go from there. Is there any questions about that? That's just kind of, I just wanted to review that with you real quick. So the real meat and potatoes of today's lecture is about walls, creating walls and drawing walls. Now, for the walls that you've created in your house for your floor plan, there's some things that we have to like generalize, because a lot of times the walls are different thicknesses. So for all of your external walls, we're using a 5.5-inch size for your walls. And then for all internal walls, we're using a 4.5-inch size. And we're going to talk about the different parameters, how to create those walls as we go through. And then we're going to learn how to draw our walls today using temporary dimensions and constraints. Nothing is going to be due on this for Wednesday. I just want you to practice on this and kind of play with it and see how well you can do as we move through this exercise. And we'll go through a little bit more on Wednesday, so that way we can get our complete floor plan done. All right, so walls, basic component of Revit is creating our walls. That's how we start any kind of Revit drawing. So in order to do that, we're going to go to Architecture tab, the Build panel, and the Wall tool. A couple of fun things about Revit as we go through it. If you have a tool active, you'll notice that this options bar is active. There's different ways that we can turn tools off and on. You can right click and hit cancel. You can hit escape, but you have to hit escape twice, because you when you're escaping using the escape key, you're escaping one function. If I'm running a wall and then I escape it, it'll stop it, but then I can keep drawing a wall if I start again. Or the thing I use most to cancel any kind of tool usage is this modify button up here. It automatically stops whatever you're doing. It's just like hitting the escape tool twice. So when I refer to using the escape tool twice, let me just go ahead and jump to pick a wall. It usually defaults to this basic wall generic 8-inch. So I'll just start with that one. So I'm going to click. I'm just going to draw, and it's going to come out with my feet and stuff. And you always want to draw between these 4 different elevation views. These are the elevation views that guide north, south, east, and west. And notice as I'm kind of spinning this around, it also is going to giving me the angle of that. So I have 65 degrees, 90 degrees. So not only does it give me the length of it, it also gives me the angle of where it's drawn. So I'm just going to draw a simple box. I'm going to just do 48. And if I zoom in a little closer, now you'll see it's going to break down in inches. So when I went click to let him in, it stopped using that wall. So I'm going to go ahead and hit modify, and it's going to leave that wall in place. But if I want to pick up where I left off, I can just go back to wall. It's still going to have the 8-inch generic in the property in the type selector. And then I'm going to come back over to this wall, and I'm just going to click at the end of the wall and continue drawing. There's no rhyme or reason to this. I'm just kind of giving you some examples. And then I'm going to click modify to stop it. Now, one of the best things about Revit, one of the things I love about it, and what makes it so fun and easy to do, is now we're going to go to our quick access toolbar. We're going to click this little symbol right here, which is default 3D, or I just call it the little doghouse. So you'll hear me refer to that. And we'll go ahead and click on the doghouse, and boom, you've got these walls up already. Here's our cube that we use, our directional cube. You could click on different areas of the cube to move the model around. You can click and hold the cube and spin it around and really confuse yourself. But if you forget where you are and you don't know how to get back to square one, just come back over to the cube, hit this little doghouse over here, and it's going to level it out for you and put you right back where you want it to be. Let's take a front view of this. So go to front view of the cube. Depending on the wall type you use, it's going to default to certain parameters, certain properties that are going to be used right away. So for instance, on this wall, when we create that, if I click on this wall and I come back over to my properties, all this stuff is going to be.
I'm sorry, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, of course.
So I'm with you so far. I got my little funky house drawn with all my walls. Where was that view thing again? Where's the dog house? Mine didn't have that on the screen.
If you come over to the cube and you kind of linger, it's not there now. But if you kind of linger over it, it's going to pop up.
That little northwest south thing isn't even on my screen. How do I show that?
Your cube right here.
Yeah.
Are you in 3D view? Did you go to the quick access toolbar and hit default 3D view?
Okay, probably not. Hold on. Where is
on the quick access toolbar? It's either on the top section or the special.
Oh, default 3D. Got it. Cool.
And then
Thank you.
cool. And that should bring you back to this view right here.
Yep.
And now we can move the cube. You can click and hold it.
Okay, cool. Got it.
Great, excellent.
Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, it's always awkward the first couple of times. You kind of work through that, so not a problem. All right. Let's see. Oh yeah. So these are just the few walls that I threw together and put up in some kind of weird semblance. I'm going to go to a front view again. I'm just going to pick one of these walls. And when I pick on the wall and I come back over to properties, you'll notice that in the type selectors, that wall type, and then all this other information that's in here. Now, notice this wall came in at 20 feet because per this information right here, the top constraint is set to unconnected, and the unconnected height right now stops at 20 feet. Now, I can change this unconnected wall height to 5 feet. And there it is. I can change it to 50 feet. And that's just going to change that wall type. It only changed this wall. If I wanted to select all my walls and have them change at the same time, then I can select them all. Click on one and do control, pick them all. If you wanted to select multiple things at one time, you can go ahead and click on the wall, right click to select all instances visible in view, and that's going to pick all of my walls at the same time. And then I can change that. Notice that when it came back over here to properties, they're still all unconnected, but it's blank here because I've got one at 50 feet and one at 20 feet. So if I want to change it all to 10 feet, I can change them all to 10 feet now. So when you start drawing your initial floor plan, if your walls default to 20 feet, leave them at 20 feet. There's different ways that we can adjust the height. Notice how it said it was connected or unconnected. Well, there's ways that we can connect things in the way that we can make our model manipulate things how we want it to. So when you start drawing and you notice that you have 20 feet walls, leave them at 20 feet. All right. I'll play with the walls. So if we go back to our project browser over here, and we open this up, notice this is bolded out right here. This is the 3D view that we're in. Now we can change it to other views just by using our project browser, and we'll use that a lot. If I wanted to see the east elevation, click on here. There's my east elevation. So if I ask you to jump to different elevations, sometimes it's just easier to jump to an elevation to do something else. So we want to use these north, south, east, west elevations, and those correspond to those elevation markers from our floor plan. We'll jump back to a floor plan. You can also jump to different elevations by clicking the ends, the little top of the house of these guys, and this brings us back to our west elevation. So there's different ways that we can manipulate through drawing as we're creating it. Another thing I want to bring to your attention is that you always want to make sure that when we're starting to draw out, that you're drawing in the floor plan view. You'll notice that there's also the ceiling plan view, and it looks very similar. But a lot of times when you're drawing in the ceiling plan view, it's not going to show up and you can't see it, because if we look at the level of the ceiling plan, the level of the ceiling plan defaults to 8 feet. So a lot of times people will be like, oh, I can't see my stuff, it disappeared. Well, just make sure that let's close the ceiling plan view for now, and just make sure that you are working in floor plan level 1 view. This is where we're going to do most of the work to start with. Now, one of the other things that we're going to need to know to draw our site plan, to draw our floor plan and get everything connected properly, is how to manipulate these walls. Now, we're going to do temporary dimensions and constraints. And what does that mean? So with these walls, the way they're laid out here, I could delete them, I could redraw them, or whatever, but I can also click on one, make it active, click on these little nodes on the end, and I can like move them. So here, I'm just going to make this one 90 degrees again. Let's see, I just made that one 90 degrees just by moving it by hand. And there's little shortcuts that I like to use a lot as far as connecting these walls here. Now, I could drag these walls back together, or I could use a tool to do that. So I'm going to use that in my Modify tool. And if I go to the Modify tab, this is the Modify button, and this is Modify tab. I don't know why they didn't come up with a better name, because it is very confusing. So Modify tab, Modify button cancels the current action that you're doing. So in Modify tab, we're going to go to the Modify panel, because that's not confusing. And then we're going to use this tool right here, the Trim Extend to Corner. It's use this one a lot. I recommend practicing with it, start to play with it, between now and when you get everything finished. So if I wanted to kind of close off this end right here, I can click my Modify corner tool. I'm going to click on the internal angles of what I want. So I want this to end at this point. So I'm going to click on this internal angle. And I click here and I click here, and it's just going to cut that off like that, which is nice. Now, let me go to undo. And say if I wanted to make it connect to this wall and this wall, and wanted to get rid of this one, then I would connect these two angles right here. Those two internal angles, and then it'll cut off that way. It's a nice little corner. So that's I use that a lot. It's just quick, and anything to make things a little bit faster for you is always good. So let me put that back to the way I had it before. So I'm going to undo. Notice the tool is still active with the little corner tool there. I'm going to click on those internal angles, and I'm going to finish that tool. Now I'm going to click on the Modify button and end that tool. So we're getting things that look a little bit better. So since this still looks a little crazy, I'm going to go ahead and just delete this one. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to go back to my Architecture tab. Say if I wanted to put a brick wall in this one section right here, well, I can do that as well. I can go back to my wall tool. And this building is going to have one brick wall that runs this way. So I can go back to my properties and back to my type selector, do the drop down, select all the different walls that are already preloaded into Revit, which out of all of these, I'm just going to go ahead and choose a generic 4-inch brick wall. I'm going to start over here on this end. And notice how it's already smaller than the other one. Remember, that's an 8-inch wall that we created over there. This one's a 4-inch wall. We're just going to draw this up. And as I come up here, notice it's going to catch that location line for where that other wall ends. So I don't have to guess where that other wall ends. I'm like, oh, does it end here? Does it end here? No, it's going to end right at that location line. So it makes it a little bit easier. There's now disappeared on me. There we go. There's our location line. You can click and bring that over and connect there. So you can see there's two different wall types here. 8-inch generic brick wall here. So you can see the size difference. Let's go to 3D, see what happens. So here, we've got our 20-foot brick wall. We've got our smaller walls over here. Now, what's going to make this even more fun is if we come down to this view bar down here, and if we look at this little cube, just a cube here, it's next to the checkerboard. And I want you to look at this visual styles. We're going to use this a lot too. You click on visual styles and you change that to shaded. Let's see what happens. So now we have some color to the walls. Now we have our brick wall with red in it. Now we have some shading in here. There's a couple other options we can use. I highly recommend using consistent color most of the time because it's just, it keeps that confusion of the shadows away. It's just a crisper look. But a lot of times people are going to end up working in realistic, and that gets a little confusing too because you still have the shadows. Yeah, you do have a better look of what the material looks like, but it also slows down the processing because there's so much more it's going to process through to get to this. It's always best to, you know, I recommend leaving everything in consistent color. And you can see there's a little pattern on the wall for the brick and things like that. So here we have a nice generic wall to start with. So what I want you to do is just kind of like draw some walls as we're going through this, just kind of practice that. But as you know, these walls have to be a certain length and diameter, and certain length, they have to meet certain parameters to actually create your floor plan. Well, what we're going to do to create that is we can work in 3D or we can work in level 1. Let's go ahead and work in level 1 for now. If you click on this wall, you'll notice over.
Sorry, can I ask one more question?
Uh-huh.
So when I click on level 1, it doesn't take me to that same view.
Did you double click? Is it bolded here?
It's not bolded, so hold on. Oh, yep. Thank you.
Okay, no worries. So now we're trying to manipulate the size of our different walls, how we're going to get these to the shape that we want. So I'm going to click on this wall, and notice when I click on that wall, I get the dimensions down set on this wall. And sometimes it's a little counterintuitive as far as how to set these temporary dimensions. So if I wanted to actually measure this wall, I would click this dimension over here or this dimension over here. You know, it does get a bit confusing at times, but the more you go through it, the more it'll start to make sense. This is one of those things where it's a little counterintuitive from AutoCAD. But in order to get your dimensions set, you have to click on one of these other walls to get these other ones to get set. So if I actually want the dimension of this wall over here, notice how if I jump on these other walls, it's going to get real confusing about which way it's measuring from here. It's like, I don't want it to measure to here. I want it to measure to here. Well, that's okay. We can fix that. We can grab this little node right here, drag it up. Notice that location line is going to pop up, and then we can drop that dimension right there. So now instead of measuring to here, it's measuring to the walls we want it to measure to. Notice another thing, when this temporary dimension line, and it's temporary because we're going to make it go away. These are not our final dimensions, what we look like when we actually start completing a sheet. But we do need them to set our parameters and our measurements. So this wall measured from center wall to center wall, center line, is 28 feet and all sorts of numbers. So that's not going to be super accurate for set plans. So we want to make sure that our dimension lines start and end where we're actually measuring from. So for our external dimensions, we want to go from the external line to the external wall line. So in order to do that with this node right here, I'm going to click on it. Notice how that's changing spots. This is back to the center line. This is the internal wall, and this is measurement to the external wall. So notice how those are going to jump back and forth. So it's very important to make sure that you change where these temporary dimension lines start. So I'm going to go from external wall to external wall. So that's where I actually want my dimension to come from. And this is wall, say, is supposed to be 30 feet. Well, now I'm going to click on this, click on it once, and it pops up like that. What's cool about Revit is that you don't have to worry about the inches and the feet symbols. You can just type 30 for feet, and it's automatically going to go to 30 feet. It changes that. Say if I, oops, I wanted that to be 31 feet, 2 inches. I can type 31 space 2 and enter, and that's going to change that. Another real important thing to notice is when you decide which wall you want to highlight to set your temporary dimensions is this is the wall that's actually going to move. This is the one that's going to move up or down or side to side from the dimension that you're setting it. This one is static. This one is active. This is the one that's actually going to move. And what I mean by that is if I change this dimension now to 10 feet, notice how that moved up to this space right here. If this wall was active, this wall would move down. Just another one of those things where you have to just practice and get the basic concept of it down. So let's go ahead and drop that back to like 12 feet, well, 15 feet. Doesn't matter the measurement right now, we're just kind of playing. So if I want this wall to stay right here in place at this measurement, 15 feet from this wall, I need to constrain it, much like I do in Inventor. We use constraints in Revit as well. They're not as thorough as that, and it depends on how comfortable you are using them and the practice that you're using. A lot of times, depending on if you're using a group project, you want things constrained because you don't want somebody to come in and move your wall and you don't know it, and then all throws off all your measurements and things like that. So a lot of times you want to, I recommend that we constrain our walls as we're going through this. So in order to constrain this wall in place so it doesn't move, notice I have this little temporary dimension symbol right here. We're going to click on that temporary dimension symbol once, and it's going to change the way that dimension looks. Notice how it changed there. Now we're going to click on the dimension line. And when we click on the dimension line, this little lock is going to show up. And when I click on that lock, that wall is now locked in place. That's constrained. I can always like come back and unlock it. But I always want to make sure that that is locked and locked in place. And once we click off of that, it's going to leave this dimension active. Well, I don't need this dimension because it's just going to muddy up my drawing. So I want it to go away. So if I right click, if I make it active, right click and click on delete, it's going to delete that temporary dimension line. But as you notice down here, it's giving you a little warning. Even though you remove that dimension, it's still locked in place. So it's still constrained, even though that temporary dimension has disappeared. So let's just do another one. Let's say do this wall over here. So say this wall is supposed to be measured to this wall, and this is only supposed to be like 5 feet. Let's make sure that we have our correct dimension line set in place. So say this is going to be measured from your internal wall So I'm going to set my beginning of my dimension to the internal wall, to the internal wall. I'm going to change that to 5 feet. Notice quite the change there. It moved that wall towards this wall and kept that 5-foot spacing. So there's my temporary dimension, and we'll click on that, and then we'll lock that in place. Now, this is awkward. As you go through your house and you have different layouts, it'll be a little bit easier. This is an awkward one, and but it's just practice. It's what we're doing right now. So, and let's say this wall right here is supposed to be down here, and this one's going to be measured from your external walls. Notice how it gets a little confusing with all these extra dots in here. So what we're going to do is take this one, and cycle that down. And we're going to lock that at 7.4. But what it was doing with this information here, it was giving me a measurement from this wall the inside wall to the outside wall, but I had to change the entire thing to the outside wall. But you notice I also forgot to change it right here. I can go back and I can bump that back to external wall, and then I can lock it back in place. So a lot of this is just practice. The more you start going through it and the more you start playing with it, the more sense it'll make. Some other stuff that we want to learn how to do. Let's see. Let me get rid of all this. I'll highlight everything, right click and delete. Say if I wanted to make my own wall, and this is what we're going to move to towards creating your own walls. So we're going to go to wall again. Notice the last wall that I used is the one that's going to pop up in my type selector when I want to go back to the 8-inch generic to start. On this 8-inch generic wall, I can create my own wall type from it. It's always best to start with a generic, but I want to make this wall look, so I'm going to create an exterior wall, and it's going to be 5.5 inches. So with my basic 8-inch generic wall active, I'm going to go into edit type. This is the basis of a lot of stuff that we're going to be doing. So always make sure you hit edit type. The first thing you do before you do anything else is you always want to duplicate. We're going to rename it. I'm going to call this exterior 5.5 inch. And then for this class, I just have you use your initials, so I know that's the one you made. It's always best to start with wall as well, just because it's a housekeeping thing. It's just a way to keep things organized properly, because they do lay everything out alphabetically. So if you're always looking for wall, you started the ones that you named with wall. You can go to wall. If not, you're going to be looking for exterior, then you're going to be looking for interior, then you're going to be looking for another wall type that created. So if you all just start with wall, the type of wall it is, the measurement, the size, and then your initials, that'll be the naming preference that we'll do here. So when you're creating it, the next one would be a wall interior 4.5 inches in your initials. So let's go ahead and click on OK. We've created that wall. If we jump into edit right here, Notice that it still says 8 inches. So even though we named it a 5.5 inch wall, it's still showing us an 8-inch wall. Well, when you're creating the walls, there's all different sorts of things that we can put in here to make it look like a different wall type. But just to do a start so we can get you started, let's make that exterior wall, just change that structural category from 8 inches to 5.5 inches. And it's easier to write 5.5, and that might here you would use inches. Make sure it says inches. I've seen when people have done this and they've made 5.5 foot walls, so make sure this is in inches, because it'll look like you're building a castle otherwise. You know. So just to create that 5.5 inch wall, we're going to change it to that, and we'll hit OK. And we'll go ahead and hit OK after that as well. Now we have our wall type that we just created here, and we can go ahead and just start drawing that wall to start. So these are exterior walls. Let's do something simple to start. Notice that location line pops in place so you know where to finish it there. Let's click on this wall. We didn't really pay attention to what the sizes were. So this is supposed to be 20 feet measured from the external walls. So we'll put these temporary dimensions set to our external walls. And let's change that to 20 feet. Notice this is the one that moved. If I want this one to move down or up, this is the one I want to make active. This one's active. I'll go ahead and set these temporary dimensions to my external walls. So it's only supposed to be 15 feet. So when I change this to 15 feet, this wall will move up. 15. And that's in place. So if I want to keep this in place and make sure it doesn't move anymore, remember, I'm going to hit this temporary dimension symbol. It's going to change the way that dimension line looks. Click on the dimension line and go ahead and lock that in place. Same for the other wall. Same thing over here. These are set to where we want it to be. Click on the temporary dimension symbol. Changes the dimension line. Click on the dimension line and then click on that lock that's active. So now when we come over here, we move this, it's not going to move the entire thing. So if we unlock this one, watch what happens when we unlock that. Now we can move that wall. I can't move these. These will still stay at 15 feet because this is locked right here, but this spacing will change because it's not locked. Say if this one I wanted to go back and change this to 20 feet, I have to click on this, unlock it, and then I can move that to 20 feet. Lock that in place. And lock that in place again. So a lot of this is just practice. This is why we give so much time to learning how to do walls, just so it gives you time to practice and kind of play with them and stuff, because there's a lot more information that goes in with it. But what I'd like you to do is take a look at your floor plan. And let's pretend that we're going to go over the floor plan and just kind of start drawing it out when you have time to do that. It doesn't have to be finished by Wednesday. We're going to go over some other stuff on Wednesday, but I just want you to practice it and see how it does. Because a lot of times when I find when people start laying out their floor plan, they get a little frustrated and a little confused to start. And it's just a matter of way to figure out how to put this puzzle together. So if we were starting drawing our floor plan, we've got our 5.5 inch exterior wall created. Now we're going to create our 4.5 inch interior wall. So we're going to jump back to our architecture tab, build panel wall tool. We're going to start with another generic 8 inch. Yeah, I could start with this one again. Trust me, always start with a generic. It's so much easier. I'm saving you some headaches. So I just like the 8.5 inch wall to start because it's going to default to 20 feet. And I want you to have those 20 feet walls to start so we can learn how to manipulate some other stuff. So we're going to start with my still my basic 8-inch generic wall. If I want to manipulate and make this a specific wall, remember I've got to jump into edit type. First thing I'm going to do is duplicate it and rename it. We're going to call this one wall interior 4.5 inches in my initials. Go to OK. We're going to go to this wall is now notice set to 8 inches. We're going to go into edit here. Set to 8 inches. I'm going to come back over to the thickness. I want to change that thickness to 4.5 inches. So it's set to 4.5 inches now. I'll hit OK and OK. And now I have my interior walls ready to draw. So I'm going to come in here. Notice how it's a little smaller, and you just draw that through there. If you wanted to intersect this here and just do that. On this wall here, if I wanted to check the dimensions on it, it's the same way that we do it before, but here we're going to go from interior wall to interior wall. That's only supposed to be 10 feet. We can change it to 10 feet. Same thing, we can go ahead and click on this dimension, click on the dimension again, and then click on the lock tool. Now that's locked in place. If we wanted to move this one, click on that wall. We're going from internal dimension to internal dimension. Internal dimension now. Internal dimension now. Let's set that to 12 feet. And that's going to move that way as well. So a lot of the growing pains when we start is just kind of figuring out how to do this. So the best thing to do between now and next class is just get in there and start practicing with your floor plan. Create your external wall at 5.5 inches. Create your internal wall at 4.5 inches. Start laying out your walls, making sure that you're using your external walls just for the external part and your internal walls just for your internal part. If you had, let me see, somebody had said they had trouble getting into the examples for our floor types. I'm not sure why they're not showing up in the mods, but those floor types are also located in your files. Under floor plan sketch examples. So they're right here.
I tried to open it, but they didn't open it. It had a locked image.
That's if you tried to open it up through the mod. I've got a setting on there that I can't unset, but if you go through the mod here where it says floor plans, well, I can open it because but it'll show a giant lock on here. If you try and open it through this, I've got to get that fixed somehow, so I apologize for that. But you can still access the different floor plan examples by going to Files, Fall 2021, under Files, and they're unlocked here under Floor Plan Sketch Examples. So I know that's a little confusing, and I apologize for that, but I didn't realize that it was locked and they won't unlock, but you do have access to them here under the Files. So if I click on this example, and I want to start just kind of drawing this room, you've got a floor plan that looks like this, pretty straightforward. And what I recommend is like we start drawing like these walls, these internal walls, because we did measure from the inside. So we want to do that. So say we're going to start drawing our entire floor plan from this 10 by 12 room. Let's jump to Revit. We've got our wall set. You want to create your walls first. So first thing I'm going to start with is my internal wall. So I'm going to go to my architecture tab, build panel, wall tool. I'm going to select my interior wall. So it's wall interior 4.5 inches. If I do a drop down here and we search, notice this is why I said to always start with wall, because They're laid out alphabetically. Here I know I can just go to wall and I can pick through the work that I have. If I was looking through interior and exterior walls, I'd have to look through all the interior walls, all the exterior walls that I want. Now I feel it's just easier to start with walls. I'm just trying to make that a little bit easier for you to like sort through. So I'm going to go ahead and pick my wall interior 4.5 inch. We'll jump back to that floor plan. So I was looking at a 10 by 12 foot room. So I'm going to just start with my 2 interior walls. Let's just draw a couple of walls. I'm not paying attention to my wall sizes. Oh, I just drew those out. Oh, I need to go back and fix those to what the measurement they're supposed to be. So here, I'm going to jump into this one. This is from the end of the wall to the interior wall. Here. And then you right click cancel, right click cancel. So notice how sometimes when we click too fast, we lose that measurement. So now I can go from my internal wall to my internal wall and set that to 10 feet. Now, if I want this wall over here, I can go from my internal wall to my internal wall and set that to 12 feet. And now that I've got those dimensions correct, I will lock those in place. So I forgot to lock them in place. I can come back here, click on this wall. This wall is set to internal wall 10 feet. I'm going to go ahead and lock that in place. The same thing for this wall. Lock that in place. I don't need these dimensions anymore, so I'm going to click on those and delete them. It's going to tell me, even though you deleted that dimension, it's still constrained. It's still not going to move. I hit OK. That's exactly what I want it to do. Same thing. Delete that. Hit OK. So this is the beginning of our house. So the next thing we want to do, let's go ahead and jump back over to our floor plan. Next thing we're going to do is we want to draw this wall right here. This is our external wall. Now we don't have the full dimension of from here to here, but let's just go ahead and draw one big line up and kind of play with it and just kind of see how it all works together. So the next thing I'm going to do is draw this external wall. So I'm going to go back to my wall type. And I'm just going to continue drawing, and I'm just going to draw this straight line up. But I did something wrong. I forgot to change this wall to 5.5 inches. So if I click on it and I come back over to my type selector, I'm like, oh man, that was supposed to be a 5.5 inch wall. Do I have to delete it and start over again? No, I can leave it like that. I can do it either way. I can delete it and change wall types, or I can just have that wall active as it is now, and then come back to my type selector and go down and select my exterior wall. And notice that's going to change that exterior wall right there. So it changed that wall. I didn't have to redraw it. All I had to do is click on it, make it active, and it changed to the exterior wall. If, say, for instance, you got that active and you want to change it to something else, you can always change your wall types by picking in the type selector the different wall type that you want to use.
Got a question.
Uh-huh.
Once you create a wall, you can save it and keep it, or you will have to create a new wall every time you log in or something?
Great question. It automatically saves it in Revit. It automatically saves it. So as soon as you create, you duplicate it and rename it, and you change the parameters, it's automatically going to save that wall, and it will always be there. When I shut this, when I close this project down, well, I've got to save it and then close this project down. When I reopen it, everything will be, you know, still there. It won't delete anything. Good question. And another good thing to know about Revit, and one of the best parts, is if you draw something, obviously you kind of picked up on that already. If you draw something in one view, it shows up in all the other views. Let me change this back to 5.5 inches. So that means when I draw this in my plan view, it's automatically going to populate through all my other views. All my different elevation views.
Can I ask a question about that exterior wall real quick? So I'm trying to edit that wall. And it for some reason, it sets the default as a brick exterior. And I'm trying to change the type of wall. How am I going about doing that?
All right. You have to actually create your own walls first.
Right. So I did that. So I'm trying to edit the wall that I created.
Now you picked on this wall right here.
Yep.
And if we come to our type selector in this area right here and we do the drop down. If you pick one of these other walls, the walls that they already have that are pre-made,
Right.
if I use this brick one in, for instance, you know, that's just going to complicate things for you. You don't want to use that. In fact, if we take a look at that and we come down to our visual styles and notice this little level of detail, how it says coarse. If we click on that and we change that level of detail, we change that to fine, you'll notice that it gives us the layout of how this particular wall is made.
Sure.
If we change that to color, it's going to even shade it even further, how we can see the particulars of how this wall is created. We're going to learn how to do this later on. I'm just giving you an intro now so you can get the basics down without throwing too much at you. But we want to make sure that wall that we pick is the wall that we created. So we'll make this wall active again. I do not want to use this basic wall. I want to go back down and pick my wall exterior 5.5 that I created, and it's going to change it back to that generic wall type.
Yeah, okay, that's cool. I'll go back and just create something else, because for some reason when I did all that, it still created it as a brick. When I edited and created my own wall, it made it a brick wall.
You may have started with a generic brick wall.
Okay.
That may have been it. So whenever you start creating anything new, always start with a pure generic. That gets a little confusing sometimes. So if you go to like wall, like right here, and if I don't specifically pick
I see.
the generic 8-inch to start with, if I use a brick wall to start with, it's going to make all my walls brick that I create.
Right.
I have to go back and fix that. So that's why it's always make sure that you always start with the generic. You can do a 5.5, 5-inch, 6-inch. I just like to do the 8-inch because I know that it's going to start out with 20 feet walls, and it just goes better to show you how to manipulate things later on.
That's fine. That must be where I went wrong, because now even my interior walls that I created, the 4.5-inch interior wall, even those are brick. So that must be the place where I went wrong.
Yeah, it's using that one to start with.
Okay.
Always make sure that you use a regular generic. Use the generic, but it's a brick generic. So
right.
that's going to make them all. That will make all your walls brick, and then it just makes it harder for you to change after. So yeah, just always start with that default of the generic 8-inch.
Okay, cool.
Wall to start with, and that'll do it.
Thanks.
Yeah, no worries. All right, so we've got this one thing going on here. We want to close this room off so this room looks proper. There's going to be another interior wall right here. So I'm going to pick my interior wall. I'm going to come back over here to the end and kind of close that room off. I'm going to double check my dimensions to make sure I've got everything laying out correctly with my internal dimensions. So at this wall, I'm going to click on here, and no, I was going to click on this one. And I'm going to check those dimensions. Notice how here it's showing the entire wall dimension. Here we go. Now, this is my internal wall for this dimension here, and it's not set to my internal wall here. All right, work with me. Now it's set to internal. Notice when I laid all that out, when I did that, it changed my dimensions on here when I added this other wall. It's another thing that you have to watch out for. So now I have to unlock this one. Make sure everything is set to my internal wall dimensions, and I need to change this back to 12 feet. And now I can lock it again. Now that's correct. So it does drive people a little crazy. The best thing to do is get in here and start practicing, seeing if you can get it to work. And just manipulating this stuff. The best way I can say it is that it's like a puzzle, and you're just trying to figure out how to fit these puzzle pieces together. And the best way to do it is just kind of get in there and start doing it. So that's pretty much it for the lecture today. What I'd like you to do between now and Wednesday is just kind of start playing with the floor plan. See if you can get it to work. Like I said, it doesn't have to be finished by Wednesday, but I just want you to start playing with the walls and kind of figuring them out. And it's just kind of a play tool right now. In the meantime, what I'll be doing is I'll be looking at your floor plans. I'll be going through those, checking them, just doing an overall check. Usually this is something I do in live, and we can redline them and we can talk about your floor plans, but I'll have to do them this way, and I'll make notes if need be. And that way, when we come back on Wednesday, you'll have a better understanding of how to manipulate and kind of play with these walls. And then we'll go over some more information about walls, and then we'll really kind of get into how to start your floor plan. And then the entire floor plan will be due the following Monday. But you've got like all week to kind of play with this, to get comfortable with it. Even if you don't have everything finished by next Monday, that's okay. I still want you to turn in your progress. But this is probably the biggest learning curve right now, is really just kind of learning how to lay out this floor plan. Everything else will start falling into place once we do that. Any specific questions about what we went over today? It's a lot of information, but not too much where I think you hopefully y'all weren't overwhelmed by that. Any questions, y'all?
We just got to create walls for the next class.
Yeah, for next class, basically it's just kind of, I just want you to play with it. You're not going to turn anything in for next class. You're just going to be playing with Revit, doing the stuff, the exercises that we did today. Create different wall types, your 5.5 inch, your 4.5 inch wall. Practice laying out your floor plan, and that way when we come back on Wednesday, if you're like, well, I tried to lay out my floor plan, but I couldn't get anything to work, or I couldn't get anything to join or anything, we can answer those questions at that time and kind of refresh it again. So you're still like in practice mode, and then when we come back on Wednesday, we'll learn more stuff about walls, and then you'll really kind of start your floor plans for that to be finished the following Monday.
I have a really simple and basic question that might make me sound like an idiot, but
No problem. What?
so when you're this again, I had the same problem in Cadd, but so when you're just trying to move the image around your screen, so it's always kind of centered, and you can move it to the right and move it to the left, and like, well, there's not that, but yeah, yes, that. So when you're trying to just move the image around, because I just always like to work with the image in the center of the screen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think in Cadd it was like the grab function or something like that, and the little hand would pop up and you could move it around. What is that function here in Revit?
I don't think there's anything that really corresponds to that. I mean, for this, you don't want to keep moving your house around, because your house is basically grounded here. So wherever you start drawing is where it's going to be. Yeah.
Right, but I mean, but if I scroll in or scroll out, sometimes it moves to the right corner or the left corner, depending on what part I'm scrolling to, and it just kind of tends to move around a little bit just on the screen, not within the not within the, you know what I'm saying? Yes, that
Like
function.
this?
How do I do that?
Okay. Gotcha. That makes more sense. Sorry. On your mouse, just click and hold your mouse wheel. I'm just
Okay.
holding my mouse. I'm clicking and holding my mouse wheel now, and I'm just moving.
Oh,
That's all it is.
I mean, it's always the stupid things like that I'll literally go crazy on. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Like I moved the entire walls here by clicking on them and making them active. And then
Right.
notice this little move tool shows up and I can move it for that, but I definitely do not recommend that. There's also ways that we can lock this in place, so don't do that. It will mess everything up. But in order to do this, yeah,
Right.
it's just your scroll wheel and you just click and hold it.
Got it. Okay, cool.
Yeah, no worries. And then scrolling in and out with the scroll wheel. And then a
Right.
lot of times you'll see that a lot in 3D. You can maneuver this a lot too, same way.
That's the stuff that drives me nuts. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, no worries. I'm glad it was an easy one. No problem.
Perfect.
Anything else, y'all? All right, if anything comes up between now and then, write it down. We'll go over and ask questions on Wednesday. But really today, I just wanted to kind of give you all this little playtime to get in here and kind of work on it. I really recommend trying to start laying out your floor plan. And that's really how things are going to start making sense for y'all. It does not have to be due Wednesday. And then we can answer questions on Wednesday and I'll have time to go over your floor plans and go over anything there. So that's pretty much it for today. Unless there's any other questions, we're good to go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, y'all. Have a
Thank
great
you.
day.
Thank
Welcome.
you.
See y'all Wednesday.
See you Wednesday.
Bye.